Amazingly, she brought her 3 trembling puppies directly to a stranger's house. What made her take this risk? An encounter with people in such cold darkness. And how did the unwary householder react? How did this influence their choice? A vulnerable family's circumstances and generated a surge of empathy during an unforgiving winter in the middle of a brutal winter. The terrain was covered in a thick layer of snow, each speck glistening in the light of a bitter winds howled through the skeletal trees under the dying moon, and the silence of the only sound to break the night was paws crunching on the cold ground. Desolation, a lone person appeared, a mother dog with heartbreaking and determined eyes. Her fur once, her breath, which could be seen in the freezing air, spoke as a vivid testament to life and resiliency, was now covered with frost. With unwavering urgency, she negotiated the perilous terrain with each stride. The puppies cuddled tightly against her as she followed her instincts through the swirling snow drifts, trembling not only as they followed. Their small bodies trembled from the intense cold, but also from the overwhelming terror of the unknown. Their mother's implicit trust in her, in spite of the danger that loomed, made her eyes flare fiercely. The goal of her mission was not just to survive, but also to give her offspring a glimpse of hope in the face of despair before the warm. The gentle light streaming from the windows of a small house brightened the gloomy, cold night, offered solace and sanctuary in a sharp contrast to the harsh outer world. Motivated by maternal instinct and an unwavering determination to defend the mother dog, pressing on her paws and leaving short. Every careful step was a defiant defiance to the unrelenting cold, leaving footprints in the deep snow that demonstrated the force of. When she finally arrived at the stranger's house, the scene was nothing short of pure love. In the film, a small, vulnerable family faces the terrible weather together, bound by a bond that transcended language and circumstance, setting the atmosphere for a meeting that would challenge hearts and dispel stereotypes, and finally demonstrate the transforming potential of compassion in a society that occasionally appears to be cold. The globe had been turned into a frozen wasteland by the cold winter, where every breath was apparent and every stride a fight against the ruthless cold of nature's fury in a remote town on the edge of a snow-covered valley. In this harsh environment, 18 degrees 6 had driven almost all living things into hiding. The predicament of a single mother dog and her 3 small puppies developed like a last-ditch appeal for survival in the final rays of dying light. As the dawn battled to warm the frozen ground, a shabby but resolute mother dog sprang out of the darkness. Her fur, once a warm tapestry of golds and browns, it was now coated and clumped with frost. Every muscle in her slender body clenched urgently as she made her way through the barren fields and slick walkways. She was motivated just to save. Her puppies nestled tightly against her body, shielded from the icy cold that threatened to destroy their frail lives. 3 puppies that were hardly more than shaky bundles of fur shook wildly. Their terrified and apprehensive gaze darted about at every sudden noise, including the distant howl of the occasionally hear the sound of ice shattering and wind the creak of a frozen branch. Underfoot, the mother dog's maternal instincts gently pushed them forward, her eyes never leaving. After what seemed like an eternity of traveling through the desolation, looking for any indication of refuge on the horizon, a small home with brightly illuminated windows that promised shelter from the sun was visible to the family in the distance. The tiny and inconspicuous house stood like a beacon of hope in the midst of a violent storm. Its worn facade and soft, inviting interior contrast with the snow's infinite whiteness. The severe weather outside was drastically contrasted with the sunshine as the mother dog drew. As the dilemma weighed heavily on her, every gut feeling told her that the security of the unknown was a risk, but there was a much bigger chance of freezing to death. She stopped at the edge of snowbank, her breath hazy as she contemplated her next course of action. Voices spoke softly within the house, the sounds of folks going about their evening activities without realizing the quiet conflict taking on outside their door. Michael, a reclusive artist well known in the community for leading a calm, alone existence and having a great capacity for empathy, lived inside that cozy abode. Michael had painted the winter landscapes from the warmth of his home on numerous chilly nights for all living things. His messy studio, and his heart frequently ached for the unseen misery of the world beyond his windows that evening as he paused as he sipped his tea and looked out at the whirling snow after hearing a slight noise at his door. Unusual was the repetitive crunch of a paw on snow, which evoked a long-forgotten recollection of tentative steps and compassion. When Michael opened the door, he saw the mother dog standing hesitantly outside his house. Behind her, the 3 shivering puppies had silent pleas and eyes full of urgency. And defenseless leaned near in a last-ditch effort to find warmth. Michael's first surprise was replaced by it. With an overpowering sense of duty, he bent down and held out a loving hand. His voice was gentle as he whispered, "It's okay. Come in. You're safe now." The howl of the storm and the tired quiet of the dog within were broken by comforting words. The shivering family was enveloped by the house's warmth as Michael quickly got blankets and a bowl of lukewarm. The mother dog wrapped protectively around her puppies as the water was placed gently next to the blazing fireplace. Michael's actions spoke as they gathered together and gradually started to unwind in the comforting light of safety. He had not chosen to be a hero because of a profound, unsaid empathy, but when confronted with his heart's unadulterated, desperate longing for someone else had forced him to take on the role of. As the night went on, Michael gave his new visitors cautious attention while keeping an eye on the mother. Puppy with silent awe, even though it was clear she was tired, her resolve was evident in every step she took. Pondered the lengthy journey that had brought her here, the sacrifices she had made, and the risks she had taken. Ensure her children's future in the quiet hum of the fire and the steady beat of his own heart. Outside the wind, Michael was captivated by their quiet story of survival and parental love. Its unrelenting assault on the planet. But in Michael's tiny haven, a frail family was starting too. The encounter's first shock was replaced by tender moments of connection, a mutual knowledge of loss and hope, as well as a shared warmth. Michael was aware that the night was far from done, and he and the rescued family still faced numerous obstacles. Yet at that very time, the act of providing shelter to someone who was lost in the cold turned into a beacon of hope, serving as a reminder that even in the most hopeless circumstances, kindness can kindle a flame that resists the darkness with the first. As the mother dog slept, Michael sat calmly by the fire and watched the first signs of dawn peek through the frost-laden windows. He sensed her tired head and the puppies falling asleep as they were gradually soothed by the warmth. He felt a strong feeling of purpose, as though this chance encounter marked the start of something. A brave act of goodwill had transformed a planet where all reasonable creatures had sought refuge from the chilly one. Forge a bond that would forever alter lives when the first rays of dawn started to shine through the. Michael found himself reflecting quietly on the previous night's events as the windows were covered in frost. In the gentle morning light, the unexpected and uncooked continued to reverberate in his head. His mind was seared with every detail of that fateful encounter with the mother dog and her 3 shivering puppies. With a steaming mug of tea warming his heart, he sat by the softly flickering fire, hands, and allowed his mind to return to the frantic journey that brought these frail beings to his door. Once a lonely haven for his art and reflection, Michael's house was gradually changing into a living example of compassion, with the storm's remains still discernible in the damp. He started to assess the chores that awaited him after noticing tracks on the floor and the persistent cold in the air. He discovered with a bittersweet pang that providing short-term refuge wasn't enough. Need the right care in order to recover from the trauma of the severe winter and their dangerous journey the mother dog had. Despite having heavy eyes, she automatically guided her babies to safety and was now resting in a corner next to the fireplace. They maintained a vigilant vigilance despite their fatigue, and occasionally she would prod them. A little, undernourished bundle reminding one of her puppies of her existence. Michael watched this quiet conversation with increasing sympathy, recalling his own experiences of solitude, the times when he felt unnoticed in a busy world, and the animal's silent resolve at that very moment sparked an inner call to action that he had long repressed. Michael made the decision to seek professional assistance, because he was determined to offer more than just temporary refuge. He called the Dr. Elise Carter, a local veterinarian, is renowned for both her knowledge and. Michael clarified, "I have a stray that needs immediate attention because of her kind heart." He spoke softly but urgently about a mother dog and her puppies who were discovered on my. "They had a cold last night, and I worry that they need more than simply a warm place to sleep. Dr. Carter promised to visit as soon as possible to assess their health and provide advice on appropriate care while. Michael kept himself occupied with modest deeds of kindness as he waited for Dr. Carter to arrive. He placed extra blankets, setting up a makeshift bed by the fireplace, and even searching his small pantry for some filling food that would. The animals, the simplicity of these deeds gave him a sense of satisfaction that he hadn't had in years. A new chapter was subtly developing in the middle of a dismal winter, one in which empathy spanned the divide between human solitude and the day-to-day pain of another living thing. With his unexpected guests, Michael found himself having a silent conversation. "You've been through so much," he said to the mother dog while stroking her head, his words a comforting salve against the persistent. In response, shadows of the night's eyes grew softer as she moved closer. Without expressing gratitude for his generosity, the cautious but inquisitive puppy started to investigate their new environment, their hesitant movements mirroring Michael's own path to healing and hope as. When midday drew near, Dr. Carter showed up, her presence adding a. After a thorough assessment, she confirmed with professional composure that the animals were anxious and feeble. "We're stable, they will require a healthy diet, and I advise a number of examinations over the coming weeks." Michael listened carefully, taking in the advice as she jotted down notes in her little pad. His head is already buzzing with thoughts about how to care for the stray family in the long run. But as the day goes on, as time went on, additional difficulties emerged, revealing Michael's withdrawn personality and, in the face of such responsibility, his long-standing habits of seclusion felt suddenly insufficient, and he struggled with as a lone artist. Could his mounting internal struggle lead to peaceful isolation? Genuinely turn his house and life into a sanctuary for these creatures? The burden of his personal isolation combined with a growing sense of purpose, as if the mother dog's and her puppy's presence had sparked a dormant aspect of him that longed for a relationship, so that later that afternoon he might nurture and be loved in return. Michael went outside to clear his head as the rain from the night before had turned into a mild, lingering drizzle. He strolled slowly through the glittering snow, his thoughts bundled in his tattered coat, each step a meditation on the shift in the quiet of the winter scenery. He gave himself permission to envision a time when his artwork may depict not only the nature's bleak beauty combined with compassion's transformational potential. After going back inside, Michael had a renewed resolve and decided that the stray family would not only make it through this harsh winter, but would also flourish while under his care because to Dr. Carter's. With the help of knowledgeable advice and his newly discovered resolve, he started making plans for a time when compassion and understanding would be commonplace, could bring about change for himself, as well as the creatures at his door in that brittle, hopeful. The world outside seemed a little different in the afternoon as Michael got ready for the trials ahead and the mother and puppies relaxed. The modest gestures of kindness that started inside these four walls were expected to ripple outward with less severity. As the days went by, the warmth of real, human connection gradually melted the ice of fear and loneliness. Taking care of the stray family, Michael established a new routine. An unexpected discovery started to unravel a enigma that, one clear morning as gentle sunlight seeped through, he never saw coming. Michael made the decision to clean up the little space close to the entry where the previous evening had been spent through the windows kissed by frost. While wiping away the last of the melted snow and the scattered leaves from his eyes, the mother dog had initially sought refuge. He was intrigued by what he saw beneath the worn doormat, so he bent down and carefully lifted it. It was a tiny, worn envelope with ragged edges from the harsh winter. Winds as Michael cautiously opened the envelope inside, his heart skipped a beat. He discovered a handwritten note written in on delicate, worn paper. "For individuals who have the courage to take care of others, A hasty yet lovely letter read, "I have lost the strength to fight the cold trust that hope finds its way in the darkest nights after receiving these puppies as a gift." There is only one date at the bottom that Michael knew all too well. There was no signature. Coincided with the anniversary of the day his cherished wife, Elaine, had died, causing a wave of emotions to wash over him. Overcame him with thoughts of Elaine's kind comments on cold nights. His mind raced when she said, "Compassion is our legacy." Could that be the case? Her last desires to discover the truth about this enigmatic situation were somehow linked to this stray family. Elaine had always talked about memories that Michael had long hidden away, and he started to piece them together. Fate and the mysterious ways in which life provided her with second chances. She had before talked about a stray dog that came to their house during a particularly hard winter and had such a significant impact that it had changed their lives. But Michael had never really grasped her meaning until now. The note seemed like a communication from beyond, a quiet reverberation of her kind counsel, encouraging him to go on. The letters grew while Michael sat at his desk that afternoon, carrying her legacy of kindness. Before him, along with old pictures of better days, one in particular struck his attention. Elaine holding a tiny, unkempt puppy with soulful eyes that looked so much like the current mother dog that a lump appeared in his throat. He received a final, bittersweet message that was intended to assist him as he came to the realization that perhaps fate had planned their reunion, with a fresh sense of healing and to remind him that love never really dies. Michael took up the phone and called the number of a nearby animal refuge with a sense of purpose and shaky resolve. He described the circumstance, the note, and the odd parallels with the group he had previously backed with Elaine. The representative on the other end is between the dog in the picture and the one currently sleeping in his little house. Listened carefully to her sympathetic voice and made a commitment to investigate the situation right away as the day went on. Every time Michael looked at the mother dog in her, he found himself alternating between amazement and incredulity. He felt a deep connection with the puppies, who were now safely cuddled close to the warmth. He saw echoes of Ella's compassion in their eyes that went beyond chance, and an implicit assurance that love could offer warmth and protection that night, despite the unrelenting weather. Michael chose to speak out loud to the family he had come to love during a peaceful moment while he was feeding the animals. "Think that you all came to me for a reason," he whispered, his voice faltering with. Emotion could serve as a reminder that there is always hope, even in the face of. The mother dog raised her head and locked her eyes with his, perhaps in agreement with the long and bitter evenings. Wordless comprehension. It was a moment that connected the past sufferings with a future full of. Later that evening, Michael sat by the fire with a cup of tea warming his hands and felt the weight of. The note had been both a revelation and an explanation as the mystery slowly lifted. It wasn't just an invitation to carry on the caregiving tradition that Elaine had so strongly believed in for the stray family. He received them as a gift to help him deal with his loneliness and to reignite the compassion that had previously characterized his existence. The findings sparked a deep-seated mixture of grief, hope, and Michael made the resolute decision to embrace this unanticipated duty in order to honor Elaine's legacy, understanding that every act of generosity might have a ripple effect, changing people's lives in ways he never would have thought possible. And the mother dog's unwavering eyes combined to form a single truth. Even during the most severe winter, hope and love may pierce the ice and turn hopelessness into the promise of new beginnings. Michael jotted down his thoughts as the night became darker and the room was filled with the quiet hum of the heater. He writes in a worn journal about the enigmatic remark regarding Elaine's kind comments and regarding the unspoken message that appeared to link the stray family to his own history. He started to recognize that sometimes the most significant miracles come as quiet whispers in the sky rather than with a lot of fanfare, coldly asking us to let love guide the way and open our hearts to the revelation of. In the silence, the enigmatic note had left Michael whirling with a mixture of grief, amazement, and a renewed sense of duty. Following that tragic afternoon, he found himself vacillating between incredulity and resolve as the whole. Due to the poor light, The weight of Ellen's legacy started to descend late into the night. Michael poured old notebooks and faded photos over each page of his desk lamp. Our legacy echoes the gentle refrain of kindness that Elaine once whispered. He felt both joy and grief when he realized that the stray family might be related to her last intentions. First, he was in danger of drowning in sorrow due to the unbearable solitude that had characterized his life. The quiet of his, once a haven for reflection and creativity, the lonely abode now seemed to require more than just solitude. Michael felt compelled to take immediate action to preserve the warmth of their past in order to respect Elaine's memory. Additionally, by showing empathy to the mother dog and her 3 frail babies who had so surprisingly found refuge at his own grief and the animal's frantic situation at his doorstep at that precise moment, interwoven, giving him a strong motivation to improve his life and be motivated to find the truth about. Behind the enigmatic note, Michael started calling right away, reaching out to a local representative. A kind, sympathetic voice from the animal protection organization promised him that an inquiry will be started to find out. "Mr. Michael, your message on the beginnings of the stray dog is incredibly heartwarming, and we'll investigate this issue immediately," she replied, her words acting as a comforting salve, telling him that he was. Michael began changing in the meantime, but he wasn't alone in this unexpected mission. His everyday routine, he concluded that his house used to be a peaceful haven for Alone. Now, the artist would act as a refuge, a safe haven for these defenseless animals, and a living homage to. Elaine altered the space by the fireplace, adding more thermal space because he believed in the redemptive power of kindness. Blankets, and creating a comfortable nook where the mother dog and her pups may sleep peacefully and each thoughtfully. The promise that Eliane's spirit would endure through each act of kindness was a silent one. Pale sunlight started to peek through snow-covered windows on a frigid morning. Michael sat next to the mother dog, softly shaking and petting her head. "I know you've gone through a lot, but now that you're safe, I swear I'll do all in my power," he whispered, "to keep you and your children safe." As Elaine always thought that compassion can alter the world, the mother dog's eyes, conveying a silent, unsaid appreciation, appeared to nod in understanding that, in spite of the roughness, her tired soul, she saw in Michael a kindred spirit resolved to change things because of the winter and the adventure she had been through, in the days that followed. Michael observed little, yet significant changes in both. The puppies, who had before been so shy and listless, started to, with hesitant enthusiasm, they investigate their new surroundings, their lively movements gradually displacing the shadow. With curiosity mixed with dread, the mother dog's constant guardianship. Her children, but now took more breaks as though the ongoing stress of existence were gradually giving way to a frail sense of. Those around him were aware of these internal adjustments in terms of security. Once murmuring about Michael's withdrawn personality, neighbors now commented on a renewed warmth in his eyes and a tenderness in his manner. So some would even drop by to bring a cup of hot soup or other tiny gestures of assistance without bothering. There were indications that the neighborhood was starting to come together around him and the stray family Michael's house, including an additional blanket. Once alone in its quiet, it now throbbed with a modest but constant intensity of group concern and care. Michael was documenting his observations in a worn journal doctor in the afternoon. Carter, the kind local vet who had initially come to see how the animals were doing, returned to keep an eye on their development, explaining in a soothing and calm manner. "Michael, these creatures' health is gradually getting better, but they still require constant care, but you're doing a fantastic job. Their strength is growing every day." Her words confirmed that every effort was worthwhile. Michael had reaffirmed his determination to use his own sorrow as a source of inspiration for others. Encouraged by Dr. Carter, Michael became thorough in recording every little detail. He observed a playful fall or the mother dog nuzzling one of her puppies when it faltered as a sign of recovery. These insights were more than just notes. Among the young ones, they might briefly light up the room, living evidence that even during the harshest winter, deeds of compassion might warm the souls of the coldest people and ignite the signs of rebirth. As the days passed, Michael started to get more involved. with the examination of the enigmatic note exchanges with the Animal Protection Organization. The gap that had previously been defined by other volunteers and even casual conversations with neighbors was eventually filled by every encounter, every conversation, and every anecdote shared reaffirmed the notion that in the smallest deeds of kindness can ripple outward and change lives during the darkest times. Michael learned that it was not only feasible, but also possible to strike a balance between the suffering of the past and the optimism of a bright future. His house had become a living example of resiliency, where every act of kindness, no matter how small, how little, might repair the wounds caused by a heartless and uncaring person and restore a broken spirit. Whirled as the days went by and Michael's home's shaky haven started to stabilize, unforeseen issues appeared one cold afternoon while Michael was busy getting ready for a big event that would put his newly discovered commitment to the test. Supper for the Stray family. He was surprised by a tap on the door and opened it. Discovered a young woman named Laura who had a camera hanging over her shoulder and curious eyes. Laura, a local journalist renowned for her heartwarming accounts of community heroes, clarified that she had heard there were rumors going around the neighborhood about an unexplained rescue on a chilly winter night, and I was keen to record. Despite being gratified by the attention, Michael's journey was filled with anxiety as he feared the public scrutiny may endanger the tranquil existence he had meticulously created for himself and his unannounced visitors. Michael hesitantly consented to talk to Laura as long as she respected his new hire's privacy. Household. Laura's presence caused conflict among the neighbors when she started filming in his small living room. Others whispered that an artist's home should not be bothered by onlookers, while others commended Michael for his kindness. Local officials soon became aware of this emerging media attention, and rumors started to circulate regarding Michael was stuck between possible zoning infractions and illegal animal shelter operations. The danger of exposing Elaine's private haven to unwelcome meddling and the wish to uphold his legacy of kindness. Meanwhile, late one evening, an unforeseen quarter presented another difficulty. While snuggling the puppies and next to the fireplace's warm glow, Michael observed that one of the small ones, a frail puppy with big, sad eyes, was trembling and not participating in its brother's boisterous antics more aggressively than the others, and a slight whimper suggested an invisible suffering. After a quick checkup at the hospital, Michael became frightened and called Dr. Carter once more. Dr. Carter of a neighborhood veterinary clinic conveyed the disturbing news that the puppy was suffering from a hereditary illness that was gradually weakening the available remedy would need. Michael's heart ached at the prospect of losing the puppy, and he now had to deal with expensive prescription drugs and specialized care. Sobering truth that his charitable work was sometimes financially challenging. As though these difficulties weren't enough, Michael got a surprise call from an old buddy, Daniel Reyes. Daniel, a community organizer today, was a former co-worker of Elaine's who had drifted away following her death. In light of Michael's incredible recovery and the enigmatic note that connected the Stray family to Alan's memory, he wished to reunited and even offered to assist Michael in establishing a suitable shelter in the hopes that they could jointly commemorate Elaine's larger-scale vision. Although Daniel's worry moved Michael, Additionally, he was cautious because he had bittersweet recollections of the past and wasn't sure if revisiting old wounds would eventually aid or impede his fragile development amidst these developing subplots. The local, an animal protection group that had previously pledged to look into the cryptic note, started sending. During follow-up visits, representatives questioned the Stray family in depth about their health and situation of their arrival, and even the importance of the message Michael had discovered scrawled by hand beneath the doormat. Despite their good intentions, their questions made Michael feel vulnerable. It seemed like every aspect of his private life, from the personal details of his late wife's legacy to the unvarnished reality of his present difficulties, which Laura, the reporter, was recording. Michael's journey captures both her quiet, sensitive moments and the obvious strain of outside forces. Michael hesitated when discussing the note regarding Elaine's legacy in the interviews. Her camera captured the gleam of the moment he made an odd bond with a mother dog and her puppies. Recalling Ella's kind counsel brought tears to his eyes, but it also encapsulated his resolve to safeguard the lives that had been entrusted to him. But as her, when the information started to appear in the local media, opinions split somewhat. Believed that Michael was a contemporary hero who embodied compassion in the face of hardship. Condemned him for allowing what they considered to be an unlicensed animal rescue business to operate in his house, and the weight of, late at night, as the winter wind howled outside. These outside viewpoints made Michael's internal conflicts worse. And Michael would sit by himself as the fireplace's flickering flame created dancing shadows on the walls. He wondered in his mind if he could really maintain this fine balance between his artistic, the cost of medical care, loneliness, and the duty of caring for a live representation of hope. Both the sick dog and the possible legal issues brought on by his unapproved shelter loomed. Despite the growing pressure, a resilient spark loomed over him like an approaching storm. Stayed inside Michael during quiet periods of reflection, recalling what Ella had spoken about kindness being a lasting legacy, and he decided to face these obstacles with newfound vigor. He approached people in the neighborhood directly, asking for their help and guidance. They even took into account Daniel's proposal to set up a suitable refuge where stray animals might be lawfully housed and cared for. Michael started creating blueprints for a small but controlled sanctuary that may eventually be used as a permanent residence. As the days went by, not only for his new family, but also for other creatures in need. Weeks, the complex network of subplots, media attention, and financial strain. Michael was resolved to overcome the difficult environment brought forth by personal echoes of the past and community distrust. Despite being intimidating, overcoming each challenge served as a reminder of the tremendous impact that, in the middle of these tumultuous currents, one act of compassion may have on a community. Michael held fast to the conviction that every obstacle was a chance to pay tribute to Ella's memory and spread kindness that could eventually provide warmth on even the coldest nights amid the whirlwind of media interest and growing financial pressures and the burden of an unresolved past. Michael became more and more enmeshed in a maze of every day appeared to bring a fresh challenge of conflicting feelings that compelled him to doubt not only his capacity to provide for the stray family, but also what compassion and legacy one really entail. Especially stormy afternoon, when the once cozy living room became tense with anticipation as the wind howled outside. Michael sat at his messy kitchen table and gazed blankly at a pile of overdue bills that represented the expenses for Dr. In addition to Carter's care of the sick puppy, local authorities unexpectedly sent him legal notifications raising concerns over his hands were shaking as he struggled to make sense of the unsanctioned shelter operations that were starting to overwhelm him. He muttered to himself, "How can I honor Ella's memory when every step forward feels like 2 steps back?" When the phone rang and the voice could almost be heard above the distant rumble of the winter storm, it was Daniel, an old acquaintance who had returned to Michael's life and offered to assist in setting up a controlled refuge when. Daniel's voice was soft but firm, and Michael responded, "I know it's been difficult since Elaine's death, but I firmly think that we can work together to build something enduring that you don't have." Though intended to be consoling, the statements only made it more difficult to bear this weight alone. Michael was caught between a stubborn need to support others and a want for support, so he hesitated before responding. "Handle things on his own terms, Daniel." "Thank you for your concern," Michael said, slowly, "but I'm not sure if I need to reopen old wounds at this time. I feel so burdened with responsibilities, and I am reminded of what I lost every day." After a lengthy silence on the other end, Daniel replied quietly, "Sometimes Elaine's belief in compassion allows Michael to heal by sharing the burden." As Michael struggled with these thoughts that night, a knock on the door revealed that it was her memories guiding him rather than shackling him. The journalist Laura had her camera bag draped over her shoulder and was staring at Michael with genuine interest. "Could I please come in? I would like to talk to you about how your tale is affecting the community," she added. Michael still, reluctantly, weighed down by self-doubt. He consented to sit with the stray family in silence in his living room. Laura, who was sleeping in the background, gently asked, "How do you handle all of this attention I know it must be quite hard to strike a balance between your personal sorrow and the obligation." You can now see that her inquiry was filled with sincere worry, and as Michael, his voice became vulnerable as he hesitated, as if every day were a struggle. "I'm caught between attempting to create a future that Elaine would be proud of and paying respect to the past, save these defenseless lives, and feeling completely isolated in the battle." Laura's camera caught every unfiltered moment. As Michael talked about his inner struggles, a tear sprang to his eye, and Dr. Carter made a second visit and examined the animals in a kind and steady manner. Turned to face Michael. "I can see how much stress you're under," she said. "Taking care of these creatures is a lovely thing, but remember that even the best caregivers need to take care of themselves." Her remarks, "Can't pour from an empty cup," evoked strong recollections of Elaine's kind direction that evening as, with old photos and incomplete canvases all around him, Michael sat in his studio and started to face the unpleasant reality. He was having a hard time juggling his personal sorrow with the burdensome duty of serving as a beacon of hope. In a moment of silent despair, Michael contacted a small local animal assistance group on behalf of the stray family. At a small meeting in a local community hall, lovers and neighbors learned about his predicament. One elderly woman's eyes were filled with suspicion and empathy as the voices mixed. "Michael, you have a huge heart, but remember to take care of it as well." Elaine would want you to find. A younger guy, filled with cynicism, found comfort in the warmth of others, but these deeds of goodwill are sometimes interpreted as interfering with the contradictory system. But can one man truly change it? Later that week, while Michael figured things out, the opinions just made his inner struggle worse. Through his notebook, Michael's ideas descended into a deep internal conversation, and he wrote in the margins the sacrifices made by the mother dog, the faith shown in her puppy's tender eyes, and his own hesitation too. He wrote, "Accept help. I'm afraid that by letting others in, I might dilute. The vulnerability of everything I've created is revealed by the unadulterated recollection of Elaine or worse." However, as he went over Ella's old correspondence and her favorite saying, "Compassion is our legacy," he sensed a slight change in his heart. Perhaps being vulnerable wasn't a sign of weakness, but rather a vital step toward. In the middle of these intricate relationships and self-doubt, healing and development. Although at first reluctant, Michael's relationship started to change the way he spoke with Daniel. Developed into sincere conversations in which mutual understanding was facilitated by shared pain with Loris. Michael gradually gained the ability to express the deep significance of his adventure through repeated yet courteous questions, enabling his audience to observe both the hardship and the tenacity resulting from ingrained. By the end of the week, Michael found himself at a crossroads, caught between compassion and between seclusion and the potential for a coordinated attempt to establish a safe haven. The emotional struggles persisted as relentlessly as the bitter cold of winter, but every exchange and every instance of unfiltered vulnerability served as a springboard for accepting a new collective future. A day in the future when Elaine's legacy would be celebrated by him. As winter worsened and the days became shorter, the entire community came together to resist the harshness of the outside world. One frosty evening, the strain surrounding Michael's sanctuary started to increase in unanticipated ways. At his messy workstation, Michael was looking over yet another pile of increasing invoices and legal notices when he noticed a subtle yet unnerving. He noticed a shift in the atmosphere. There seemed to be a strange weight in the air, as though every wind gust whispered tales of perils that were waiting just outside his door. It began with minor, seemingly. Michael initially spotted a black van idling a little too, but it was an insignificant detail. Despite his best efforts, the silent engine and veiled windows next to his home sent a shiver down his spine. Ignore it as a mere coincidence, but as the days passed, the vehicle showed up at the same moment. Every night, it is parked quietly by the side of the road, and one night its presence becomes more ominous. Before going to bed, Michael was making sure the stray family was okay when he noticed a shadowy figure lurking in the shadows outside his window. His heart thumped rapidly as he looked out into the darkness among the snow-laden trees. unsure if what he'd seen was. The enigmatic figure disappeared into the darkness as swiftly as it had emerged, whether it was real or just a trick of the light. The growing tension was exacerbated by an unwavering sense that Michael was no longer alone. A fresh investigator named Ms. Reynolds was introduced after receiving an unexpected call from the local animal protection organization. "We've been looking into your situation more thoroughly, Mr. Michael," she said in a clipped voice that conveyed genuine concern. "Stated that there are hints that the note you discovered during your rescue could be related to something far more than just a small gesture of goodwill." Her remarks were given an A. He was startled by the calm voice on the phone, wondering what could possibly connect his lonesome rescue to A. Laura, the tenacious journalist, reappeared at the same time as the larger covert network. Using fresh footage from an impromptu visit, she showed blurry footage captured by, "This is what I caught when a neighborhood homeowner saw the dark van following Michael's house late at night." Described how her large eyes were filled with a mixture of worry and joy. "Someone is keeping an eye on your home. I'm not sure if this has anything to do with your rescue, but we must." Investigating Laura's revelation raised suspicions and a sense of urgency, implying that Michael's sincere act of kindness may have inadvertently attracted the interest of forces with dubious motives amid these increasing events. During a heated encounter at a court, Daniel's return took on an even more nuanced tone. Neighborhood Cafe Daniel admitted that earlier in the week, Michael, someone in the shadows, had been in touch with him. "He came up to me and said," looking around anxiously and in a low voice, "they said they knew about Elaine's. They implied that Elaine's legacy is much more than their covert work with animal rescue. More contentious than we could have ever guessed." Daniel's remarks revealed a secret chapter in Elaine's history that was full with rumors of secret meetings, contested finances, and covert partnerships. Could it be that Elaine had become involved in a network with organizations whose names were never mentioned out loud, that aimed to recover what she had previously shared so freely? And revelation only made Michael's inner unrest late one night as he sat alone himself in the solitude of his study. He examined Elaine's previous correspondence and photos in an effort to find any hints that could support or contradict statements concerning clues. He discovered a partially burned receipt and a string of mysterious messages in one fading envelope that alluded to the connections to the Guardian Project and Operation Warmth were not clear, but clearly linked to her love of rescuing abandoned animals, a love that had just taken on a completely different dimension. Every new discovery added to Michael's growing awareness that his sanctuary was becoming into the nexus of a dangerous dimension, long forgotten and potentially hazardous legacy. The strain of these increasing. At home, Michael's nerves were weakened by revelations and the ongoing surveillance. The black vans. Occasionally, headlights would pierce the darkness outside his window, and he could practically hear people talking in low tones. Things he wasn't supposed to know made him feel more alone, torn between a strong need to keep the stray safe and family and a fear that everything he did, even his tender connections with a mother dog, was being observed. Puppies, who were formerly comforting, now evoked mixed feelings as though they're at a community gathering called by worried neighbors. The innocent person's presence served as a beacon for unwanted scrutiny. And municipal authorities, Michael was asked to clarify the circumstances, the validity of his refuge, while some voiced concerns over possible violations of local laws. The town hall was filled with distrust and apprehension. "Mr. Michael, we all appreciate your generosity, but we need to speak with an official whether there is more to this story or if Elaine's legacy is connected to any secret networks," commanded his voice, which reverberated across the crowded room. The meeting finished without any definitive answers, just more questions and Michael's life had changed into a precarious balancing act at the conclusion of that week, and there was a noticeable sense of foreboding. Act with a mixture of sincere sympathy and a growing sense of intrigue that threatened to destroy everything he had worked so hard to achieve. Day as he took care of the stray family and made his way through the increasingly hazy waters of hidden dangers and public attention. In a world as icy and unforgiving as the winter outside, he was reminded that, in the quiet of the night, even the most kind deeds may attract the attention of those with more sinister intentions. Michael was awake when he heard the mother dog's gentle whimpers and the distant hum of the black van. Decided that he had revealed the truth about Elaine's secret, no matter how unpleasant or hazardous it may be. Legacy was starting to build a web of mystery, and Michael and Menace were aware that his next move might decide not just his sanctuary's destiny, but also the potential future of a legacy he believed had been lost in the days after the eerie week of increased monitoring and growing questions. Michael was pulled deeper into the mysterious network alluded to in the mysterious text and a labyrinth of Ellen's hidden past. After learning about phrases like the Guardian Project and Operation Warmth in old letters, he began looking for. Michael responded late one evening as a little snowfall softly fell outside his window, sat down with his journal, and started assembling scattered clues, a quest that would eventually lead him to unanticipated allies and uncover obscure aspects of his late wife's work. That in the morning, Daniel, an old acquaintance whose presence had been irregular since Ella's death, paid Michael an unexpected visit. Passing showed up holding a stack of old paperwork in his hand He spread the documents across Michael's dining table with a serious expression, and I discovered these among some of Elaine's possessions. Daniel gently admitted. Up until now, I never dared examine too carefully, but these in the letters, they said that I had met members of an international animal rescue network, and I believe Elaine was. She may have been more than just a kind-hearted volunteer. She may have been involved in a secret effort to save endangered creatures and possibly provide some warmth to the coldest nooks and crannies of. Michael felt his heart race with a mixture of exhilaration as Daniel described the globe. And detest the records that described clandestine meetings and transfers of rescued animals and money from unidentified sources. One letter specifically referred to Operation Warmth, project that, despite the most severe circumstances, Michael knew would offer sanctuary to animals in need. That Elaine's legacy, the empathy she had given him, may have served as the impetus for an underground. Later that day, a network devoted to defending life against all odds. As Michael struggled to process these revelations, Laura returned to his door, carrying a notepad and camera. Wanted to provide an update on her ongoing story, but this time her focus was more general and less focused on human interest. Complex story. Michael, your tale has progressed beyond a self-rescue, she quietly said. There's a legacy here, something hidden in the past that could, as they sat in the living room, alter our perspective on animal rescue and even community kindness. I feel that a bigger network is at work, and I wish to assist you in discovering it, but only if you're willing to divulge more than just your hesitant personal troubles. Initially, Michael acknowledged that Laura's persistence and tactful demeanor could be helpful, so he permitted her to record the investigation as it develops, or at least keep it within tight bounds to preserve the privacy of persons concerned. Together, they went over the documents Daniel had given Laura, and Laura's curiosity and journalistic skills started to turn the unprocessed information into a story that made sense and implied. There may be links between Elaine's covert work and global conservation initiatives, and even some unscrupulous people taking use of that same goodwill for their own benefit. Dr. Carter's visits persisted at the same time, but her worries now went beyond that. During a consultation for the stray family's immediate health, she told Michael, I've been hearing whispers among certain co-workers regarding a network that extends well beyond nearby animal shelters. It appears that some people are using these events as a front for more structured ones. So, I wouldn't be shocked if Ella's prior involvement was. It's a lot to process when you're connected to these circles, but if there's any truth to it, it indicates that you're not simply worried about loss. Animals, you're also protecting a legacy that may be in danger. These comments made Michael shudder. The thought that his small deed of compassion might become enmeshed in a wider, perhaps hazardous web compelled him to. In the meantime, neighbors started to share their own accounts, some of which involved witnessing. Another reported strange phone calls that suggested pressures, while another reported seeing strange faces loitering close to Michael's property. The community's collective murmur became louder from unidentified sources. Every story was a piece of the bigger picture that night during a heated community gathering at the local. Both supporters and skeptics confronted Town Hall Michael, a middle-aged. While your sympathy is admirable, We must comprehend if your actions are. What guarantees do we have that nothing illegal is happening when activities are a part of an uncontrolled and potentially dangerous network? As Michael inhaled deeply and resolutely described his experiences, the room fell silent. In his passionate speech, he explained the note's links to Eliane's legacy and the promise of Operation Warmth. Struck a chord with many, inspiring optimism and a cautious resolve to pursue additional truth following the meeting. Michael was approached surreptitiously by a shadowy person speaking in low tones. The stranger provided information that Elaine was a project that prevented many deaths in both humans and animals, but not all who. There are forces that want to take advantage of those who are involved and have good intentions in order to gain power and money. The warning unnerved Michael, but it also motivated him to look into it more in the following. Days later, Daniel's memories and Laura's reports started to converge, and the stranger's cryptic clues brought the group began charting the relationships between each other's current local happenings in Ellen's secret network. Meeting, each shared paper created a story that portrayed Ellie as a source of personal kindness, as well as a linchpin in a complex network of international rescue efforts, one that was now required. Defense against those who would exploit it for their own sinister purposes. And as Michael concluded, yet another exhausting day with the Stray family. The enormity of the mystery that was developing around him made him feel both elevated and burdened. The fragile sanctuary. His house was transformed from a haven from the harsh winter into a battlefield for truth, legacy, and lasting sympathy. The links connecting his past, present, and uncertain future became more apparent. Michael was more determined than ever to respect Eliane's legacy by bringing attention to the obscure areas with each step he took. Tensions had been building for weeks in a world in dire need of warmth, until one chilly, bleak morning. Everything came to a climax when Michael woke up to an urgent banging on his door, which by this point broke his heart. He approached the door with trepidation and was greeted by two grim-faced local police officers, followed by a town council representative's. Faces were solemn, and their remarks were filled with a sense of urgency that Mr. Michael, the lead officer, stated that we must talk and left no space for small talk. With you right now on the way your animal shelter operates, there have been several grievances, and it seems that several local ordinances may be broken by your property. Michael's pulse. In his sanctuary, which was created out of love and desperation throughout the harsh winter, and was now being examined, led the officers to the living room, where the Stray family was still, and invited them within his shaking palms. Sat close to the hearth, where there had been a calm sense of healing and hope. Laura rushed into the room before Michael could explain, appearing to falter under the pressure of legal threats. Camera in hand, and begged Michael to hold on, as we explained that there was more to this than minor zoning infractions. Her resolute voice clashed by the authorities' icy efficiency, but the officers were unfazed by their incisive inquiries and direct, so we have proof. According to one officer, there are signs that your property is being watched, of illegal activity that may have been related to this enigmatic network in which your late wife participated. Michael shuddered when Ella's name was mentioned because his thoughts immediately returned to the mysterious papers and the rumors. The room became quiet as Michael spoke about the Guardian Project and Operation Warmth that was having trouble gathering his thoughts when the doorbell came again, louder and more urgent than. Before Michael reluctantly opened the door and looked at Laura anxiously, he saw a tall, dark-haired man. His eyes were calculating and cold as he stood on his porch, and he was dressed in a suit that offered a business partnership that might even be covert. "Good morning, mister." Michael responded calmly. "My name is Mr. Harrington, and I work for a private group with a vested interest in preserving particular traditions." Michael's heart raced as Mr. Harrington went on. "I think you have something really important in your possession. We have been keeping an eye on your animal shelter's condition, and I must caution you about the links to Elaine's activities. That you are crossing dangerous territory. Not only are you breaking local laws, but you might also be dealing with issues that go well beyond this neighborhood." His eyes moved. "I suggest you think twice before turning back to Michael and go for the mother dog and her puppies, who are now cowering in a corner. Your actions for the animal's welfare and your own protection caused the room to become a clamor of opposing voices. Mr. Harrington's intrusiveness, the local authorities, and Michael's own desperation. Michael sobbed, his voice breaking with grief. I'm just trying to help these animals. I'm honoring Elaine's memory. I'm not involved in anything illegal that he said, but she thought that kindness may make the world a better place. Appeared to be ignored, as the officers exchanged doubtful glances, and Mr. Laura moved forward with a steady yet passionate voice. But Harrington's countenance remained unreadable. This is not. It's a rescue effort, a criminal enterprise, an ray of hope during a harsh winter. Michael's story is one of. Every tense moment was documented by her camera with compassion rather than exploitation. Michael's eyes filled with tears, but even as she stood up for him, it was evident that the growing strains were. Outside, the menacing black truck that had haunted Michael's nights drew up, shattering his fragile tranquility. The vehicle was parked subtly close to the property, its headlights subdued, but its presence was obvious, as though it were a reminder that forces outside his control were closing in on him, and a sign of more incursion. The environment grew even more agitated and appeared discouraged and rushed when Daniel, the old acquaintance, showed up out of the blue. Michael clarified, I recently learned that the company Elaine used to work for is being investigated. They're attempting to regain control over her programs for illegal animal trafficking, and it seems they perceive your operation as a danger. And the revelation marked a sea change for Michael. His selfless deed had unintentionally placed him in the sights of influential, dark interests. Officers, Mr. Harrington, and even community people suddenly appear to be pawns. In a much bigger game, kindness and compassion were intertwined with danger and corruption when the conflict reached its peak, the room turned into a battleground of thoughts and anxieties, with Michael standing in the middle, torn. In the face of enormous external circumstances and the sincere desire to safeguard these vulnerable lives, the legal dangers, dubious monitoring, and the sinister ramifications of Elaine's concealed legacy came together to form a single, unavoidable fact that his haven and his soul were under danger in that crucial time when tension reached a fever pitch and voices clashed. Michael was aware that he would have to decide whether to give up his sanctuary to the demands of the government and corporations' interests, or would he battle to uphold the compassionate legacy that Elaine had so fervently cherished? Dangerous would influence not only his destiny, but also the course of all those who had sought safety under his. Following the intense altercation, Michael's world teetered on the verge of collapse in the living room. As the scene was set for a final and definitive showdown, the air was filled with the din of accusations and warnings. Tense as local police officers Mr. Harrington, Daniel Laura, and Michael stood at the center of the awkward gathering of the just-arrived representatives from Elaine's former network. In the middle of it all, his eyes were burning with a mix of defiance and desperation. Enough, Michael yelled, his voice piercing the clamor. I am not a crime, and I will not allow anyone to take away the kindness I've shown these people. Animals only warmth, shelter, and a chance to live if they are protected. This statement resonated in the charged stillness that means I must face every accusation thrown at me. Followed, and everyone in the room appeared to pause for a time, caught in. Mr. Harrington walked forward with a calculating and icy gaze, bearing the weight of his conviction. It's important for Michael to realize that by acting outside of local laws and possibly becoming, you are endangering more than just your personal image by becoming engaged with Elaine's contentious past. There are forces at. His tone was calm, but the danger beneath his words was clear. Work here forces that will not hesitate to undermine any impediment. Unmistakably, Laura's statements were interrupted by her camera, which was now laying on the table. Have determined that what Mr. Harrington refers to as forces are only the harsh. Michael's actions are motivated by the realities of a system that penalizes kindness when it doesn't fit neatly into a box. Her remarks caused some of the bystanders to mumble in agreement that love is something that shouldn't be illegal. Others maintained their disbelief, but Daniel was clearly shocked by the discovery of Elaine's darker, softly implanted associations. I realize this may seem unbelievable, but Elaine's work was always about saving lives, not putting them in risk, Michael. You have to have faith in that you have good intentions, but you also need to be ready for the fallout that will undoubtedly occur if these folks show up. His eyes met Michael's after you, and he silently begged him to see reason even as. He talked about his personal struggles, and the police officers looked at each other, divided between adhering to protocol and one of them was a younger officer who was moved by Michael's emotional plea and had a sympathetic sparkle in his eyes. "Spoke up, sir. We have a duty to uphold the law, but we also have an obligation to make sure that nobody is disproportionately penalized for demonstrating real concern. Perhaps there's a way to settle this without destroying everything you've constructed." His remarks in a tentative but genuine manner, providing a brief counterargument to the bombardment of charges. Under the increasing strain, Michael came to the realization that making a decision that would determine not just his destiny, but also the animal's fate was the only viable course of action. After taking a deep, reassuring breath, he declared, "I will adhere to the relevant procedures to guarantee that although this sanctuary is safe and lawful, I won't allow bureaucratic red tape to obscure my actual goals. Tape or taken advantage of by people who want to control his life and make money." His voice is now. His resolve to protect the haven he had was resolute and unwavering. Created as soon as Dr. Carter returned to the room, her presence say, "Michael, if you're willing, I can assist you in navigating these legal issues. You have a soothing effect on the chaotic atmosphere that I've witnessed enough in my work to know that, when properly structured, compassion can transcend even the most stringent challenges. We can collaborate to build a proper shelter that respects Ellis' memory and satisfies all prerequisites." What she offered was a lifeline, concrete answer that enabled Michael to put his enthusiasm into practice. Mr. Although he was still cautious, Harrington acknowledged the change in tone. "If you can show that your organization is, we may be able to prevent more issues if it is both legal and advantageous to the community. But don't be misled. His remarks implied that the network I represent would be carefully monitoring him, if not outright." As the story approached a crucial turning point, Laura sensed the animosity and asked Michael, "What will you do now? Will you stand up for this cause, even if it means making portions of Elaine's past visible to the public?" Michael's eyes moved over the faces in the room, which now showed a mixture of dread, hope, and resolve. "I'll do whatever it takes to make sure compassion wins," he responded. As the conference came to an end, I told Elaine, these creatures, and myself. The parties reached a temporary agreement whereby Michael would collaborate with Dr. Carter and Regional Legal Counsel to convert an unapproved shelter into an animal care facility with full accreditation. Meanwhile, an inquiry into Elaine's previous relationships would be started, with the assurance that any malicious. It was a delicate compromise, but one that would reveal and remove certain elements. Provided Michael with a way forward and an opportunity to respect his wife's legacy without compromising the integrity of his. The group dispersed, departing with broken hearts but resolute spirits. In the silent aftermath, Michael was by himself thinking as the menacing black vehicle faded into the distance. Headlights were a dim reminder of the dangers that lingered in the darkness, but Michael felt a renewed sense of purpose as a result of the difficult and conflicting judgments made in that room. Though risky and unclear, the path that clarity had led him on was guided by an unflinching faith in the force of compassion and love. The harsh winter appeared to get worse every day, and Michael's previously peaceful. As evening approached, Sanctuary had evolved into a strengthened bastion of compassion in the face of growing external challenges. Gathered over the snow-covered terrain, a final build-up before the storm began, and an almost palpable electricity filled the air. Would break that night. Michael stood outside his living room's huge window, gazing out into the encroaching darkness. Silently parked at the far end of the street was the menacing black van that had been a recurrent ghost in his life. Headlights were dim but ominous, and every shadow and wind gust appeared to, within the anxiety among those present, whisper warnings of what was to happen. Was evident earlier that day when Laura and Dr. Carter Daniel met with Michael, and he went over the most recent Animal Protection Organization intelligence in their small study, and the hushed rumors from worried neighbors. who were now feeling the pressure of these revelations. When Michael opened the door to discover Mr. Harrington, the tense silence was broken by Kurt's knock. Stood there once more, this time with two stern-faced people on either side of them, whose eyes had the distinct gleam of authority. "Mr. Michael, we must complete our plans," Mr. Harrington, speaking in a calm, collected manner. "Your business is about to get involved in issues that go much beyond local laws." And it was evident from his statements that the private group he represented was laced with a veil of threat, was unwilling to allow Michael's altruistic endeavors to go unchecked within the air research. Became even more tense as Michael's allies looked at each other anxiously before Daniel's voice broke the stillness. "Michael, they are coming to make one last demand, and we must make a decision. Do we capitulate now, or do we risk everything by refusing to back down?" The words felt like a physical hitting. Michael's thoughts were racing as he balanced the risk of losing everything he had ever created, Laura, with the expense of his values. With a determined gleam in her eyes, the observer adjusted her camera. "This is it, Michael. Your story has reached a tipping point. Both the public and the people posing the threats are keeping an eye on it. It's time to come clean about Elaine's efforts to uncover the network that has been bothering you since that day." Note revealed her recommendation, but bold only made Michael's internal conflict worse. However, he remembered Elaine's kind warnings and her conviction that kindness should never be imposed on the harsh press. But the stakes were now too great to keep quiet. Dr. Carter came forward with a tone that was sympathetic and practical. "Michael, we are battling not only a bureaucratic overreach, but also a covert network that has taken advantage of your wife's legacy for its own benefit. I've seen proof linking illegal trafficking to clandestine activities. If we can reveal this to Operation Warmth, we'll not just protect your housing, but honor Elaine's genuine mission as well." Her remarks struck a profoundly moving chord outside the wind. Michael felt a mix of anxiety and hope. The black van's motor purred softly in the background, a continual reminder of the howl that seemed to be mirroring the chaos within. Mr. Harrington's eyes narrowed as he repeated his words, indicating the impending danger. "As the temperature drops, this is your last warning that your operation will not be permitted. In order to upset the delicate equilibrium that already exists, you must either fully comply with." The threat hung in the air. Either the law, or we will take matters into our own hands. In that tense moment, Michael's heart pounded as he glanced around at his assembled fans. His choices seemed to center on this one crisis point, making the Stray family so figuratively naive and unaware of the high-stakes drama playing out around them. Resilient people slept soundly by the fire. For extended periods of stillness, presence had turned into a beacon of hope and a draw for people with less noble goals. Reigned as Michael processed the seriousness of the directive, recalling Elaine's statement that compassion is our legacy, and he felt the burden of accountability descend upon him like a veil when he recognized that. He was unable to conceal himself from fear or uncertainty any longer, because his actions will now not only determine his own destiny, but, with a shaky but resolute voice, Michael would also decide the fate of the legacy that Elaine had entrusted to him. "I'll work with the legal authorities to turn my refuge into a fully accredited establishment. I refuse to allow fear stop me from exposing any corruption that could jeopardize our life-saving effort." Dim the compassion's light, his remarks, however restrained, had the impact of a last stand, and the audience became silent as everyone took in his statement. Mr. Harrington's face stayed inexplicable, but the focus in his stance suggested a small amount of discomfort for the network representatives. Looked at one another, their expressions tightening, as though they were preparing for an impending clash. The terrible omen that lurked outside the black truck highlighted the seriousness of Michael's situation in that. The storm raging outside, and the room pulsing with the energy of collective resolve marked the peak of the confrontation. Michael was aware that the days of taking shortcuts were ended, and that the next course of action will decide not only his shell, but ultimately the strength of compassion and the integrity of Elaine's legacy. Under the depressing gloom of the unrelenting winter storm, a world that had long lost its warmth, the tension at the breaking point, Michael's living room was filled with the flickering light of the hearth while the fierce wind howled outside and thunder boomed outside. A menacing black van continued to hover at the property's boundary, serving as a continual reminder that evil forces were encroaching. Heated environment, Michael's sanctuary's future, and Eliane's legacy were all on the line at once. Everyone in Strode was shocked as the door suddenly flew open, and Strode Officer Ramirez was a modest but resolute figure with resolute eyes. "I'm Officer Ramirez," he declared in a stern but sympathetic tone, "and I've been looking over your case," he said. There is proof that Michael's trembling hands gripped his journal, causing the room to pause momentarily. Video and official records that show Mr. Harrington's company has been. They have been using your refuge as a cover for their criminal actions, including illegal coercion and spying. As Officer Ramirez positioned a hefty envelope, there was a collective murmur among those present, and Michael's heart raced. He went on to demonstrate that not only does this envelope include paperwork and verified recordings on the table, but it also, property being seen without your permission, but that a private network has made conscious steps to. His authoritative yet sympathetic voice was used to suppress real rescue attempts. Mr. Harrington's cool exterior faltered under the weight of the revelation, breaking through the tense silence. Absurd, spitting, his voice now tinged with rage, but before he could respond, "We have already notified higher authority, and an independent inquiry is underway," Officer Ramirez said. "Underway. And additional proof will soon demonstrate that the issue is not your operation, but rather the abuse of it by Daniel, who had been mute up until this point, is among those who are trying to gain control." I could tell that Elaine's work was entirely Michael's when he spoke out, his voice breaking with emotion. Shelter created out of unadulterated love is being attacked by powers that manipulate kindness for financial gain and influence his statements. Sincerity and roar struck a deep chord in the space where Laura kept her camera hidden, went forward, recorded every scene, and added, "Michael, your narrative isn't just about defiance. It's your demonstration today that even the most formidable obstacles can be surmounted is evidence of the transformational power of compassion." Her silent encouragement lifted Michael's faltering spirits, and the room became silent as the officer stood up for what's right. "Mr. Harrington, you are hereby placed under arrest pending more interrogation," Ramirez added. About the actions of your organization when a squad of police arrived to remove Harrington from his protests. His carefully crafted facade crumbled under the weight of unquestionable proof, leaving him. In that crucial moment, Michael felt a wave of comfort and validation that left him speechless and alone. He started crying, not just because of the grief he had experienced with Elaine, but also because his heart was filled with hope again. Michael said, "This shelter was never about breaking the law," his voice echoing with newly discovered strength. "Our legacy is one of compassion, of saving lives, and upholding Elaine's pledge. And nobody can take that away from us." Dr. Carter, who had been Michael's constant companion during the experience, put a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Your bravery, Michael, has inspired a transformation that goes much beyond these boundaries today. We've demonstrated that genuine compassion may reveal wrongdoing and arouse anger. Justice's words are compassionate but firm, strengthened the moment's triumph as the first rays of dawn broke through the dense clouds outside. The environment changed noticeably, and the storm's crushing weight appeared to lift as though driven by the power of. Officer Ramirez's revelation of truth and compassion in the living room had not only disarmed the danger, but had also brought the room together with a common goal to remember Elaine and safeguard the defenseless. Michael remained steadfast amid the confusion, encircled by his supporters, neighbors, acquaintances, and even officials who were first dubious but finally saw the indisputable importance of his work today. Have not only protected this sanctuary but also conveyed a strong message, Michael stated in a calm and unwavering voice in a globe. Even in the hardest winter, where cruelty and selfishness might occasionally rule, the light of true compassion can shine. The black van that had loomed like a gloomy omen at night was now sitting empty and quiet at. According to Michael, the property's edge represents a threat that has been lessened by the strength of group integrity. Reverberated throughout the space, a feeling of rejuvenation started to blossom. The crisis had reached its peak, and a transformational. Once a sentimental recollection had transformed into a pivotal moment. Elaine's legacy was launched. Rallying cry for change when the storm passed. In that pivotal moment, hope flooded the room outside, and Michael realized that his trip was far from ended. However, he was prepared to confront whatever lay ahead, supported by the steadfast conviction that compassion, no matter how brittle, may triumph over the most severe hardships. As dawn emerged over the tumultuous winter scenery, Michael's sanctuary radiated a fresh sense of peace and soft warmth that appeared to chase away the last vestiges of the past. However, the previous week's events had turned his humble house into a beacon of resiliency and hope. Michael took a deep, calm breath in the gentle morning light and gave himself permission to think quietly about the chaos. This turning point was the result of the fight and impending dangers, and it was a confirmation of his compassion and Elaine's legacy's lasting influence in the days following the dramatic conflict. Michael put in a lot of effort to make the adjustments that would ensure his shelter's survival, with the support from Drew Carter's attorneys and even some of the formerly doubtful. He started the process of turning his unofficial rescue operation into a fully authorized animal shelter with the help of local authorities. Every agreement signed and rule followed by the care facility was a step toward turning his little haven into a haven that could benefit the larger community, one that not only offered instant protection and warmth, but also encouraged others to show kindness. The inquiry into Elaine's background and the dubious organization that had previously threatened to take advantage of her labor was still ongoing. Laura's reports, which were now more objective and perceptive, documented the narrative that skillfully strikes a balance between intense facts and personal feelings. Through her lens, the world discovered Ella's covert commitment to saving animals in danger and the degree to which an underground movement that was begun by acts of compassion has now been revealed and is gradually being. Daniel's participation was first a source of hesitancy, but it was later changed for the better, turned into a pillar of the revitalized endeavor as old wounds progressively healed and evolved into a common commitment to pay tribute to Elaine's memory while the stray family undergoes these institutional adjustments. Acted as a live representation of hope, the mother dog, who was before tormented by the severity of severe winter, had a calm dignity, and her eyes were now filled with gratitude for having survived. Her 3 puppies that were once weak and shaky started to flourish while playing with Michael, expanding and bringing laughter and vitality into the sanctuary. Their naive fortitude strengthened the conviction that, even during Michael's worst moments, every act of kindness could inspire change in the world. Was both exterior and internal, with the loneliness and sorrow that had defined his early years were progressively replaced by a growing sense of belonging to neighbors who had before thought of him as a recluse. The artist started having deep discussions, sharing and offering assistance. As a member of a society bound by empathy, Michael found that letting others inside his heart did not create a living legacy of care and support, rather than diminishing Ellen's memory. Oneness in every meal shared, encouraging remark, every tiny act of. He sensed Ella's presence guiding him during his community duty, confirming that compassion was, in fact, a force that could conquer even the most icy obstacles at a joyous celebration hosted at the newly created shelter, which is now formally known as Warmth Haven. Michael spoke to the gathered community in a steady and filled with sincere belief, and conveyed a message of hope, as we have all seen during relentless Prevail. Helene previously had the view that compassion is our legacy, and we still stand by it now, collaborating to demonstrate that this legacy is not just alive, but flourishing every day. His remarks were greeted with applause and recognition, as every act of kindness is a triumph against the powers who aim to split us. Cries of happiness as individuals from many walks of life promised to help the cause and share the message of hope over the coming weeks. That followed, Peace Haven developed into a symbol of change more than just a place to stay. Local schools planned volunteer days and murals praising the rescue, and even the once distant local community were painted by community artists. Authorities started to support Michael's journey, which had developed from a single act of kindness into a movement that had an impact on innumerable lives. And now Michael is standing at the doorway of this new age, where Elaine's memory and the tenacity of the Stray family meet. He considers a future had emerged from the lengthy journey, the suffering, and the intense conflicts with evil powers. His once lonely house is now a thriving center of shared support and goodwill thanks to the generosity of others. Dreams and caring for one another are a living example of how, even during the coldest winters, the warmth of. Before I go, I would like to extend an invitation to you to join me on this continuing journey. Compassion can spark a revolution. You have been moved by Michael's tale and have learned that even a tiny act of kindness may have a big impact. Please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below with your ideas on the transformation of compassion, your community, or your life. And never forget that every act of kindness counts, because, one life at a time, we can all work together to make the world a more welcoming place. Watch our next. Thank you for viewing this video to learn how Warmth Haven keeps expanding and inspiring optimism despite hardship. Until the next time, continue to be kind, sympathetic, and maintain the warmth.